welcome back to the myth busting series. I'm going to walk you through 3 popular terms, phrases or opinions that you've probably heard and tell you whether or not they are true. 99% of the time they're not true. If you do enjoy this video, if you find it helpful, please drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down below. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Let's go. Okay, number 1. You can eat whatever you want as long as you're exercising. Now, this probably comes from the idea where you have the odd individual that apparently is able to eat almost whatever they want or consume a lot of food and not really put weight on. Okay, they'll struggle to gain weight. We all know one person probably within our friend group or sort of circle who is that individual who can just eat a lot of food, seamlessly eat what they want and not gain weight, right? Now, that is not typically down to just exercising in itself. What that will be down to is the amount of exercise that they're doing and the amount of food that they're taking in. And in those scenarios, quite often all that's happening is that that individual, one, probably has a high starting, let's say, maintenance intake, right? So they basically have a high amount of food that they can take in initially and still just maintain their weight, okay? Down to numerous different reasons that can come into muscle mass, height, whatever it might be, right? But that individual probably has this high starting point anyway. Secondly, that individual probably does exercise quite a lot or just move in general quite a lot, okay? The more you're moving, the more calories you're expending, the more food you can then consume, yes. Because if we're looking at it from an energy balance standpoint, if you're taking in more food, you then have more calorie allowance that you can probably take in too, in terms of food intake, before you're getting to the point where you're going to gain any weight, before that point where food intake is going to overtake energy expenditure, okay? So the more you exercise, yes, the more you can eat. Doesn't necessarily mean you can eat whatever you want, because once again, we probably still have to be aware of the amount of calories in certain foods, how calorie dense foods are, and therefore which foods we still have to eat in moderation. Even if you were training a lot, if you were just to eat the most calorie dense foods you could think of, and a lot of them, probably wouldn't be too long before you do start gaining weight, because your calorie intake is overtaking the amount of calories you're expending on a daily basis. So no, you can't just eat whatever you want, especially if you're looking for the best results for certain goals. So let's say you're wanting to drop body fat, then you still have to be very controlled with what you're taking in. Let's say you're wanting to change how you look, you want to add muscle mass. Again, we can't just eat whatever we want. We're still going to want to make sure we're taking a certain level of, let's say, vitamins and minerals, micronutrients, a certain level of, let's say, protein intake, good quality sources of these foods as well. So we can't eat whatever we want. However, the more you exercise, yes, typically, the more you will be able to eat in general in terms of calories before you get to the point where your intake is going to overtake your energy output. Number 2, if it worked for my friend, it will work for me. Now, I can see why a lot of people would just follow what their friend is doing when it comes to nutrition and when it comes to training, right? If you see your friends getting results with their training, with their nutrition, it's just easy for you to do the same thing, right? You want to do it with them. It's something you can do together. However, this idea of it worked for someone else, it's going to work for me, is incorrect, okay? The reason for it is that everyone is an individual, everyone is different. There are going to be a lot of different factors that you have to take into consideration, and those factors will be different for nutrition, for training, whatever it might be. That will determine how well that program or plan is going to work for you. Just as a quick example, so this makes sense, if it comes to training, everyone is built slightly differently, everyone has different biomechanics. One exercise might fit that individual very well, whereas when you come to do it, you might struggle, it might feel terrible, you might not get as much out of it. When it comes to nutrition, your friend might be able to eat 2,000 calories and drop body fat. You might have to have your calories lower at 1,600 or vice versa. There's a lot of different factors you have to take into consideration and look at. It's not as easy as just this works for one person, so it's going to work for me. The basics, the very, 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 very basics like you have to be in a calorie deficit works for everyone, but then the individual factors and, let's say, numbers of how much that actually is going to differ from person to person. And lastly, number 3, ab exercises are the best way to burn stomach fat. Hopefully by now we know you cannot target or spot reduce body fat. So you can't say, I want to drop body fat from my back, so I'm going to go and do back exercises. It doesn't work like that. I want to drop body fat from my stomach, so I'm going to go do ab exercises. It doesn't work like that. Body fat as a whole, in terms of your whole body, will drop over time, and you can't pick and choose where that drops and how fast it drops from certain areas. Typically you will find areas like your midsection will be a little bit slower and will likely take the longest in comparison to other areas, but again, individual differences can show here, and some people can drop body fat quicker, let's say on their chest, and they do their back, or vice versa, or legs, whatever it might be. But typically midsection around the hips will be the longest to drop for most people. So all you have to do in that scenario is not worry about what exercises you're doing, because that's not going to have any impact on where you're dropping body fat or how much. Instead, is just concern yourself with being in a calorie deficit consistently for a long enough time, because then eventually you'll get lean enough to the point where those areas that you're wanting to reduce that maybe taking the longest will eventually be lean. So there you have it, 3 different terms, phrases, or opinions that you've probably heard and whether or not they are correct. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please drop a like. If you have any questions at the end of this, throw them down below. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe so you can keep up to date with the rest of the videos. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.